In the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, where death whispers through every canyon and heroes are born in the space between heartbeats, a single moment would shatter every assumption about courage, skill, and what it truly means to serve. When General Marcus Reed walked past that Barrett .50 caliber rifle, he expected to see another soldier maintaining their weapon. What he discovered instead would force the entire military establishment to confront a truth they weren't ready to face. Some stories are born in boardrooms and briefing halls. Others emerge from the dust and blood of battlefields where legends write themselves in bullets and silence. This is the story of how one soldier's extraordinary achievement at 3,200 meters didn't just break records, it broke barriers that had stood for generations. What happens when the impossible becomes undeniable? When skill transcends every boundary that tradition has built? When a single shot fired in the darkness of war illuminates truths that peacetime could never reveal? The answer lies in the mountains where eagles fear to soar, where only the most elite warriors dare to hunt, and where one soldier proved that excellence knows no limits, only those we impose upon ourselves. The morning sun painted the Afghan mountains in shades of amber and shadow as General Marcus Reed made his rounds through forward operating base thunder. His boots struck the rocky ground with practiced precision, each step carrying the weight of 30 years in uniform and command over 12,000 soldiers scattered across this hostile terrain. The base hummed with activity as personnel prepared for another day of operations in what locals called the Valley of Death. Reed had seen more combat zones than most soldiers could name. From the deserts of Iraq to the urban battlefields of Somalia, he had earned his stars through leadership forged in fire and decisions that saved lives when seconds mattered more than politics. Today felt different, though he couldn't place why. Perhaps it was the intelligence report suggesting increased Taliban activity in the northern sectors, or maybe it was the subtle tension that always preceded major operations. As he approached the sniper's nest overlooking the valley's eastern approach, the distinctive silhouette of a Barrett M82A1 caught his attention. The massive .50 caliber rifle lay positioned with mathematical precision, its bipod adjusted for the exact angle needed to cover the mountain passes 3,000 meters away. Everything about the setup spoke of professional expertise. The weapon gleamed despite the harsh conditions, maintained with the devotion that separated elite marksmen from ordinary soldiers. Reed paused, expecting to exchange a few words with the sniper responsible for this sector's overwatch. The position was critical. From this vantage point, a skilled marksman could neutralize threats long before they reached the base's perimeter. He had reviewed the duty roster that morning and knew Staff Sergeant Morgan Chen was assigned to this position, one of his most reliable snipers with over 200 confirmed eliminations. Movement in the makeshift shelter caught his attention. A figure emerged from the shadows, adjusting equipment with fluid motions that spoke of countless hours of practice. But, as the person turned toward him, Reed felt his assumptions crumble like sandcastles meeting an unexpected wave. The soldier standing before him was not Staff Sergeant Chen. Instead, he found himself looking at Specialist Elena Vesquez, a soldier he recognized from administrative briefings but had never seen in this context. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, her uniform bearing the dust and wear of someone who had been in position for hours. What struck him most was the complete lack of surprise in her eyes, as if she belonged here among the instruments of precision warfare. "General," she said, snapping to attention with crisp professionalism. Her voice carried the steady calm that Reed associated with his most experienced operators. Reed's mind raced through protocols and procedures. Women had been serving in combat roles for years, but sniper positions remained predominantly male territory, not through regulation but through the brutal physical and mental demands that few could meet. The Barrett alone weighed 30 pounds, and operating at this elevation required conditioning that pushed human limits. "Specialist Vasquez," he replied, his voice betraying none of his confusion. "Where's Staff Sergeant Chen?" "Medical evacuation, sir. Food poisoning from last night's MRE. I was assigned to maintain overwatch until his return." Her response was immediate and professional, but Reed sensed there was more to the story. He looked past her to the rifle's position, noting details that spoke of more than temporary assignment. The weapon had been adjusted for someone shorter than Chen's 6-foot frame. The scope settings showed modifications that indicated extended use rather than quick substitution. Most telling were the small personal touches: a photo tucked into the equipment case, water bottles positioned for easy access during long watches, and the kind of setup that spoke of ownership rather than temporary duty. "How long have you been qualified on the Barrett?" Reed asked, his tone shifting to the careful neutrality he used when gathering information that might challenge his understanding. 18 months, sir." I completed advanced marksmanship training at Fort Benning and requested assignment to a sniper team upon arrival at this base. Her answer carried the confidence of someone stating simple facts rather than making claims. Reed studied her more carefully. Vasquez stood perhaps 5 feet 6 inches, with the lean build of a distance runner rather than the bulky physique he associated with heavy weapons operators. Her hands, however, showed the calluses and steadiness that came from endless hours behind a scope. Her eyes held the particular focus he recognized in his most dangerous soldiers, the ones who could remain motionless for hours while tracking targets across impossible distances. And Staff Sergeant Chen approved this arrangement? Reed's question carried layers of meaning. He was asking about protocols, about chain of command, and about the informal networks that actually made military units function. Staff Sergeant Chen has been my spotter for the past 6 weeks, sir. We've worked as a team on 17 missions. She paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. Our success rate has been exemplary. Before Reed could respond, movement in the valley below caught his attention. Through the shimmering heat waves rising from the rocks, he saw a small group of figures moving along a goat path that intelligence had identified as a smuggling route. They were too far away for visual identification with the naked eye, but their movement patterns suggested military training rather than civilian travel. Vasquez had seen them too. Without waiting for orders, she dropped into position behind the Barrett with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. Her body molded to the weapon as if it were an extension of herself, her breathing settling into the controlled rhythm that preceded precision shooting. Range? Reed asked, moving to where he could observe both the targets and Vasquez's response. 3,100 meters, she replied after a moment's calculation. Her voice had shifted to the flat tone snipers used when processing multiple variables simultaneously: wind speed, air density, target movement, and dozens of other factors that determine success or failure at extreme range. Reed felt his skepticism warring with growing respect. 3,000 meters was beyond the effective range that most snipers ever attempted, yet Vasquez had called the distance with the confidence of someone who had made such shots before. The Barrett was capable of reaching such distances, but human factors usually limited practical accuracy to shorter ranges. Through his binoculars, he watched the figures below continue their movement. They had spread out now, their formation suggesting awareness of potential observation. One figure carried what appeared to be communications equipment, while others bore the distinctive silhouettes of modern assault rifles. Confirm hostile identification, Reed ordered, testing both her judgment and her adherence to rules of engagement. Vasquez's response came after careful observation through her scope. 3 armed individuals, military-style formation, carrying equipment consistent with reconnaissance or spotting operations. They're using hand signals and movement patterns that indicate tactical training. No visible civilian identifiers. Her assessment matched his own observations, but Reed was more interested in her methodology than her conclusions. She was following proper procedures, gathering information systematically rather than making hasty judgments. The discipline impressed him more than raw shooting ability ever could. Weather conditions, he asked, continuing his impromptu evaluation. Wind variable from the northwest at 8 to 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15. Temperature differential between here and target area approximately 15 degrees. Air pressure dropping, suggesting weather system moving in from the west. Her recitation was immediate and precise, the kind of environmental awareness that separated professionals from amateurs. Reed realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. Vasquez wasn't just competent, she was demonstrating the kind of comprehensive skill that he had seen in perhaps a dozen snipers throughout his entire career. Her knowledge went beyond basic marksmanship to encompass the complex calculations and environmental factors that made extreme-range shooting possible. The figures below had paused now, and, through his binoculars, Reed could see one of them raising what appeared to be a spotting scope toward their position. The tactical situation was developing rapidly, and decisions would need to be made based on capabilities rather than expectations. Assessment of threat level, he asked Vasquez, curious to see how she would handle the escalating situation. They've identified our position or suspect observation. Their equipment suggests forward reconnaissance for a larger operation. If they're allowed to complete their mission, they'll have detailed intelligence on our defensive positions and patrol patterns. Her analysis was sound, but Reed was testing something deeper than tactical knowledge. In his experience, the best snipers possessed an intuitive understanding of the larger battle space, an ability to see beyond their immediate target to the broader implications of their actions.
Recommended action?
The question carried the weight of actual command decision. Whatever her answer, Reed was prepared to act on it or explain why he wouldn't. Vasquez remained silent for nearly 30 seconds, her eye never leaving the scope as she continued tracking the figures below. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the certainty of someone who had moved beyond doubt into the realm of professional judgment.
Single elimination shot on the individual with communications equipment.
Distance and environmental factors make multiple target engagement impractical, but removing their ability to report will force them to abort the mission or proceed without intelligence support. Either option reduces the immediate threat level. Reed felt something shift in his understanding, not just of Vasquez but of his own assumptions about capability and service.
Her recommendation demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking that transformed good soldiers into exceptional ones.
She was considering not just what she could do, but what she should do to achieve the best tactical outcome. The wind had steadied now, and, through his binoculars, Reed could see the figures below beginning to separate, with one individual moving toward higher ground that would provide better observation of the base. Time was becoming a factor, and leadership demanded action.
"Take the shot," he ordered. What happened next would remain fixed in Reed's memory for the rest of his career.
Vasquez's breathing settled into the controlled pattern that preceded firing, her body becoming absolutely still despite the uncomfortable position on the rocky ground. The Barrett's massive barrel shifted fractionally as she made final adjustments for wind and distance. The rifle's report when it came was enormous, a thunder that echoed off the mountain walls and announced to everything within miles that serious business was being conducted. But Reed's attention was focused through his binoculars on the target area, watching for the impact of a bullet fired across more than 3,000 meters of hostile terrain. He saw the figure with the communications equipment drop instantly, the distinctive spray pattern indicating a center mass hit despite the extreme range. The other figures immediately dove for cover, their tactical formation dissolving into the desperate scrambling of individuals suddenly faced with threats they couldn't locate or counter. Reed lowered his binoculars and looked at Vasquez, who had already begun adjusting her position to track the remaining targets while they remained in cover. Her expression showed neither satisfaction nor excitement, only the calm focus of someone who had completed one task and was prepared for whatever came next. "Confirm elimination," she reported in the same flat tone she had used for weather assessment. Reed raised his binoculars again, scanning the area where the target had fallen. There was no movement, no sign of the communications equipment that had made the individual a priority target. The shot had been perfect, a demonstration of skill that most snipers never achieved even under ideal conditions. "Outstanding shooting," Reed said, meaning it more than any commendation he had awarded in years. The remaining figures below had begun moving again, but their advance toward observation positions had been abandoned in favor of retreat. Without their communications specialist, they were operating blind in territory where a single sniper had demonstrated the ability to reach them at any distance they might consider safe. Reed studied Vasquez as she continued monitoring the situation below. There was something about her demeanor, the unconscious competence in her movements, that suggested this level of performance was routine rather than exceptional. She handled the massive rifle with the same casual efficiency that other soldiers showed with standard infantry weapons.
"How many confirmed eliminations do you have, Specialist?"
The question emerged from his growing realization that he was dealing with a soldier whose capabilities had somehow escaped his attention.
47 confirmed, sir. 63 probable.
Her answer was delivered without pride or false modesty, simply data requested by a superior officer.
Reed felt his understanding of military excellence undergo a fundamental revision.
47 confirmed eliminations placed Vasquez among the most successful snipers in theater, yet her name had never appeared on the recognition lists that crossed his desk. Somehow, one of his most effective soldiers had been operating below the radar of official notice. The implications troubled him beyond questions of personal recognition.
If talent of this caliber could go unnoticed, what other capabilities was he overlooking? How many other soldiers were performing at extraordinary levels while remaining invisible to command attention?
"Staff Sergeant Chen has been working with you as spotter for 6 weeks, Reed said, thinking out loud.
"What was your performance level before that partnership?"
21 confirmed eliminations in the 4 months prior to teaming with Staff Sergeant Chen, sir.
"The partnership has significantly improved our operational effectiveness."
Reed absorbed this information while watching the valley below, where the remaining figures had disappeared into terrain features that would make further engagement impossible. The immediate tactical situation was resolved, but larger questions were emerging with uncomfortable clarity. Vasquez had eliminated over 20 targets working essentially alone, then, more than doubled that rate when paired with an experienced spotter. Her progression suggested not just talent but the kind of dedication that transformed natural ability into professional excellence. Yet none of this had registered in the formal evaluation systems that should have identified exceptional performance.
"I want a full report on your service record and operational history," Reed said. "Have it on my desk by 1800 hours?"
"Yes, sir." Vasquez continued scanning the valley below, her attention never completely diverted from the tactical situation despite the administrative request. Reed remained at the position for several more minutes, ostensibly observing the area where hostile activity had been reported but actually studying the soldier beside him. Everything about Vasquez's demeanor suggested that the morning's engagement was routine rather than exceptional. She maintained her watch with the patient intensity that characterized professional snipers, ready for whatever might develop while appearing completely relaxed. As he finally prepared to continue his rounds, Reed realized that his understanding of military service had been fundamentally challenged. Excellence, it seemed, didn't always announce itself through official channels or conform to expected patterns. Sometimes it operated quietly in the spaces between formal recognition, achieving results that spoke louder than any commendation. The morning was still young, but Reed knew it had already changed his perspective on leadership, capability, and the assumptions that shaped his decisions. As he walked away from the sniper's nest, he found himself wondering how many other extraordinary soldiers were serving with quiet distinction while remaining invisible to command attention. Behind him, Vasquez continued her watch over the valley, the Barrett position to cover approaches that lesser marksmen couldn't even see clearly. In the growing heat of the Afghan morning, she maintained the patient vigilance that kept 12,000 soldiers safer, her presence a reminder that excellence often operated in shadows while others claimed the spotlight. General Reed's office felt smaller than usual as he spread Specialist Vasquez's personnel file across his mahogany desk. The afternoon sun slanted through reinforced windows, casting harsh shadows that seemed to emphasize the contradictions emerging from the documents before him. What he was reading challenged everything he thought he knew about talent recognition and military effectiveness. Elena Vasquez had enlisted 3 years earlier with test scores that placed her in the 95th percentile for spatial reasoning and mathematical comprehension. Her physical fitness evaluations were consistently excellent, though not remarkable by special operations standards. What caught Reed's attention was the pattern of assignments that followed her initial training. She had requested sniper school immediately after basic training, a request that had been denied twice before finally being approved as part of a pilot program examining expanded roles for female soldiers. Her instructors at Fort Benning had noted her exceptional performance but had also included subtle reservations about her suitability for frontline sniper operations. The language was carefully neutral, but Reed recognized the coded skepticism that often surrounded non-traditional assignments. Phrases like "performs well in controlled environments" and "demonstrates technical proficiency" carried undertones of doubt about real-world application. It was the kind of qualified praise that suggested competence without inspiring confidence. Her first assignment had been to a logistics unit where her marksmanship skills went largely unused. 6 months of paperwork and supply chain management had been followed by a transfer request that took 4 months to process. Reed noted that during this period, Vasquez had continued training on her own time, using personal leave to attend advanced shooting courses and maintain certifications that her official duties didn't require. The pattern continued through her second assignment to a military police unit, where she had performed admirably in conventional duties while consistently requesting opportunities to utilize her specialized training. Her superiors had noted her reliability and professionalism but had seemed reluctant to place her in positions that fully utilized her capabilities. Reed found himself growing frustrated with the institutional blindness he was uncovering. Here was a soldier who had repeatedly demonstrated exceptional ability while being consistently underutilized due to concerns that seemed more cultural than practical. The military's promotion of merit-based advancement apparently had significant blind spots. A knock at his door interrupted his review. "Come," he called, recognizing the distinctive cadence of his aide's approach. Captain Martinez entered with additional files and a concerned expression. "Sir, I've compiled the operational reports you requested regarding Specialist Vasquez's missions over the past 6 months." Reed gestured to the chair across from his desk. Martinez was one of his most trusted officers, someone whose judgment he had learned to value during their 2 years working together. If anyone could provide context for the unusual situation he was investigating, it would be Martinez. "What's your assessment, Captain?" Reed asked as Martinez settled into his chair.
Frankly, sir, I'm shocked at what I found.
Vasquez has been involved in 23 successful operations during the past 6 months, with a mission success rate that exceeds our most experienced teams. But, somehow, her contributions have been consistently underrepresented in official reports.
Martinez opened his folder and extracted a series of photographs and mission summaries. Take Operation Iron Eagle from 6 weeks ago. Official reports credit Staff Sergeant Chen with neutralizing 5 high-value targets during a convoy interdiction.
But, when I interviewed team members, they consistently described Vasquez as the primary shooter, with Chen serving as spotter and coordinator. Reed studied the photographs, which showed the aftermath of precision shooting at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. The accuracy required for such work went beyond mere competence into the realm of exceptional talent.
Why the discrepancy in reporting? Reed asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer.
I think there are multiple factors at work, sir. Some of it appears to be institutional inertia. Reports get written in ways that conform to expected patterns. But, I also found evidence of more deliberate minimization of her role.
Martinez hesitated before continuing. Several officers expressed concerns about the implications of highlighting a female soldier's combat effectiveness. They seemed to worry about political complications or questions about unit composition that they didn't want to address.
Reed felt his jaw tighten. The military had made official commitments to merit-based advancement and equal opportunity, but the reality revealed by Martinez's investigation suggested that implementation remained uneven. Good soldiers were being held back not due to inability but due to discomfort with challenging traditional expectations.
Show me the mission reports from last month's Operation Desert Knife, Reed ordered.
Martinez pulled out a thick folder containing multiple perspectives on what had been one of the month's most successful missions. A Taliban weapons cache had been discovered in a remote valley, heavily defended by experienced fighters who had chosen their position well. Standard assault approaches would have resulted in significant casualties among attacking forces. The official report described a precision shooting operation that had eliminated 7 defenders from extreme range, allowing ground forces to advance without taking fire. Staff Sergeant Chen was credited with 6 eliminations, with 1 attributed to supporting sniper fire without specific identification. But, interviews with ground forces told a different story. Multiple soldiers described watching a single sniper engage targets across distances that seemed impossible, systematically removing threats with mechanical precision. They spoke of shots fired from over 3,200 meters that found their targets despite conditions that included significant wind and poor visibility. The ground commander specifically requested to commend the sniper who had made those shots possible, Martinez continued. But, when he tried to identify the individual responsible, he was told that operational security required maintaining anonymity of sniper personnel. Reed studied the tactical maps showing firing positions and target locations. The distances involved were at the very edge of what modern sniper rifles could achieve, requiring not just excellent marksmanship but sophisticated understanding of ballistics, atmospheric conditions, and target behavior.
Have you been able to verify these shooting distances?
Reed asked. I had our intelligence section analyze the positions using GPS coordinates and terrain mapping software. The longest confirmed shot was 3,247 meters under adverse conditions including crosswinds exceeding 15 miles per hour.
Martinez paused to let the implications sink in.
Sir, that would rank among the longest successful sniper shots in military history. Reed leaned back in his chair, processing the magnitude of what he was learning. One of his soldiers had achieved shooting performance that belonged in record books, yet the accomplishment had been buried in routine reports that obscured rather than highlighted exceptional achievement.
What about her training background? How did she develop these capabilities? Martinez consulted his notes.
That's where the story gets more interesting, sir. Vasquez grew up on a ranch in Montana where long-range shooting was part of daily life. Her father was a competitive marksman who taught her advanced techniques from childhood. She was competing in 1,000-yard competitions while still in high school. The background made sense of abilities that had seemed to emerge from nowhere. Reed had seen similar patterns among soldiers who brought specialized civilian skills into military service. But, the military's failure to recognize and utilize such talent represented a systemic problem that went beyond individual cases. She also has an engineering degree from Montana State University, with coursework in physics and mathematics that directly applies to ballistic calculations, Martinez continued. Her understanding of the technical factors involved in long-range shooting exceeds that of most snipers with years of experience. Reed found himself reassessing his understanding of how talent developed and how institutions recognized excellence.
Vasquez represented the intersection of natural ability, extensive training, and educational background that created exceptional capability.
Yet somehow, the military's personnel systems had failed to identify or properly utilize these advantages. A communication device on Reed's desk chirped, indicating an urgent message from base operations. The display showed a priority alert regarding hostile activity in the northern sectors where Vasquez maintained overwatch responsibility. "Patch me through to the sniper position," Reed ordered his communications officer. Vasquez's voice came through clearly despite the distance and communication equipment.
"Sniper position, Specialist Vasquez." "Vasquez, this is General Reed. I need a situation report on activity in your sector."
"Sir, I have eyes on a 12-person element moving through the North Canyon system approximately 4,000 meters from our position. Their movement pattern suggests reconnaissance in force, possibly preparing routes for a larger operation." Reed felt his pulse quicken. 12 hostiles at 4,000 meters represented a significant threat, but also an operational challenge that tested the limits of even the most advanced sniper systems.
"Can you engage at that distance?" The question carried tactical urgency, but Reed was also testing his growing understanding of Vasquez's capabilities.
"Negative for precise engagement at 4,000 meters, sir. I can harass and delay their advance, but accurate elimination shots would require them to close to approximately 3,500 meters or less." Her assessment was professional and realistic, acknowledging both capabilities and limitations. Reed appreciated the honesty more than bravado would have impressed him.
"Maintain observation and report any change in their movement pattern. I'm dispatching additional support to your position."
"Roger, sir."
"I'll keep them under observation." Reed turned to Martinez as the communication ended. "Captain, I want you to organize a response team and move to support Vasquez's position. But I also want you to document everything that happens during this engagement."
"Sir,
are you planning to use this as a formal evaluation?"
I'm planning to ensure that exceptional performance receives the recognition it deserves," Reed replied.
"If Vasquez demonstrates the capabilities that these reports suggest, I want detailed documentation that can't be minimized or ignored."
Martinez nodded and prepared to leave, but Reed stopped him with a final instruction. "And, Captain, make sure our response team understands they're supporting operations by one of our most effective soldiers. I don't want anyone making assumptions based on expectations rather than demonstrated performance." As Martinez departed to organize the tactical response, Reed remained at his desk studying the accumulated evidence of systematic undervaluation of exceptional talent. The afternoon's investigation had revealed not just an individual story of unrecognized achievement, but institutional patterns that raised questions about how many other capable soldiers were being overlooked. The communication device chirped again, this time with an update from Vasquez's position.
"General, hostile element has split into 2 groups.
8 individuals continuing north toward the village approaches, 4 individuals moving east toward our supply route." Reed recognized the tactical complexity developing in real time. Hostile forces were moving to positions where they could threaten both civilian populations and military supply lines. Standard response protocols would require dividing defensive resources and potentially exposing friendly forces to attack from multiple directions.
"Assessment of threat priorities?"
Reed asked, curious to see how Vasquez would analyze the developing situation. "Eastern Group poses immediate threat to our supply convoy scheduled to depart in 30 minutes.
Northern Group appears to be setting up observation positions that could provide intelligence for future operations. Recommend prioritizing Eastern Group while maintaining observation on Northern Element."
Her analysis matched Reed's own tactical assessment, but he was impressed by her consideration of timing factors and supply operations that extended beyond her immediate area of responsibility. She was thinking like a commander rather than just a sniper, considering the broader implications of tactical decisions.
"Understood. Support teams are en route to your position."
Reed moved to his window overlooking the base, where he could see personnel responding to the developing situation. Vehicles were being prepared for rapid deployment, while communication centers coordinated multiple elements of the tactical response. The entire base was shifting into the controlled urgency that characterized military operations under time pressure. But, his attention kept returning to the conversation with Vasquez, whose calm professionalism under developing threat conditions impressed him as much as her documented shooting ability. She was demonstrating the kind of comprehensive tactical awareness that he associated with senior non-commissioned officers rather than junior enlisted personnel. The pattern emerging from his investigation suggested that the military was not just failing to recognize individual talent, but was systematically undervaluing capabilities that didn't conform to traditional expectations. Vasquez represented exceptional achievement that had been consistently minimized due to assumptions that had nothing to do with actual performance. Reed made a decision that would influence his remaining tenure as a general officer. Excellence deserved recognition regardless of the source, and institutional blind spots needed to be addressed through leadership action rather than administrative process. He reached for his communication device to issue orders that would ensure the afternoon's operation received the attention and documentation that previous missions had been denied. Whatever happened in the mountains during the next few hours, it would be recorded with the precision that exceptional service demanded. The late afternoon sun was casting longer shadows across the base as Reed prepared to observe an engagement that might challenge fundamental assumptions about capability, service, and the responsibilities of command. In the mountains beyond the perimeter, one of his most effective soldiers maintained watch over terrain where excellence would be measured not in expectations but in results. The support team's Humvees kicked up clouds of dust as they maneuvered through the rocky terrain toward Vasquez's position. Captain Martinez rode in the lead vehicle, monitoring multiple communication channels while studying terrain maps that showed the complexity of the developing tactical situation. Behind him, a squad of experienced infantry soldiers prepared weapons and equipment for what promised to be a challenging engagement in terrain that favored defenders over attackers. Staff Sergeant Chen had returned from medical treatment and now served as Martinez's tactical advisor, his intimate knowledge of the sniper position and surrounding terrain providing crucial context for the response operation. Despite his recent illness, Chen insisted on participating in the mission, his loyalty to his sniper partner overriding concerns about his physical condition. The Eastern Group has taken position behind those rocks about 3,800 meters from our sniper nest, Chen explained, pointing to features barely visible through the heat shimmer. They've got good cover and excellent observation of our supply route, but they've also positioned themselves where Elena can engage them if they expose themselves. Martinez noted the informal use of Vasquez's first name, suggesting a partnership that went beyond standard military relationships. In his experience, the most effective sniper teams developed a communication and trust level that bordered on telepathic, each member anticipating the other's needs and reactions. "What's her longest confirmed elimination at that range?" Martinez asked as their convoy navigated around a particularly treacherous section of mountain road. 3,900 meters under ideal conditions, Chen replied without hesitation. But these aren't ideal conditions. Winds shifting every few minutes, visibility is compromised by heat distortion, and we're dealing with multiple targets who have time to find good cover. Through his headset, Martinez heard Vasquez's calm voice providing updates on enemy movement. Her reports were precise and professional, tracking multiple groups of hostiles while maintaining awareness of friendly force positions and civilian areas that needed protection. "Support team, this is Overwatch. Eastern Group has deployed what appears to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. They're in position to engage our supply convoy when it reaches the narrow section of road in approximately 15 minutes. The tactical urgency increased dramatically with this intelligence. RPG positions at that distance represented a serious threat to vehicle convoys, particularly in terrain where evasive maneuvers were impossible. Standard counter-RPG tactics required either air support or direct ground assault, both of which would take longer than the threatened convoy had available. Martinez made a command decision that reflected his growing confidence in Vasquez's capabilities. "Overwatch, you are cleared to engage the RPG position at your discretion. Ground support will be in position in 8 minutes to handle any survivors." "Roger, support team. Beginning engagement sequence." Through his binoculars, Martinez could see the sniper position nearly a kilometer above their current location. The Barrett's distinctive silhouette was barely visible even to someone who knew exactly where to look, testament to the care with which Vasquez had prepared her firing position. Chen provided technical commentary as they watched the engagement develop. "She'll need at least 2 minutes to calculate all the variables at this distance. Wind speed, air density, temperature differential, target movement patterns, there's a lot of math involved in a shot like this." Martinez found himself holding his breath despite being too far away to influence the outcome. Around him, experienced soldiers had stopped their preparations to watch an engagement that tested the absolute limits of sniper capability. The tension was palpable as everyone recognized they were witnessing something extraordinary. The Barrett's report, when it came, was a massive thunder that echoed off the mountain walls like artillery fire. Even at their distance, Martinez felt the concussion as a physical sensation that reminded him of the enormous forces involved in .50 caliber shooting. Through his binoculars, he searched the target area for signs of impact. At nearly 4,000 meters, visual confirmation was difficult even with military-grade optics.
But Chen, monitoring Vasquez's radio frequency, provided immediate feedback. Direct hit on the RPG position. Target eliminated, weapon destroyed. She's shifting to secondary targets.
Martinez watched in fascination as the Barrett fired again, and then, a third time in rapid succession. Each shot represented calculations and adjustments that most snipers never attempted, yet Vasquez was engaging multiple targets with the mechanical precision of someone conducting a training exercise. 3 more eliminations confirmed, Chen reported. Eastern Group is falling back toward dead ground where she can't reach them. But the immediate threat to our convoy has been neutralized. The convoy itself was now visible in the valley below, a line of vehicles moving through terrain that would have been deadly just minutes earlier. Martinez could see the precise spot where the RPG position had threatened the narrow road section, and he understood how close they had come to a tactical disaster. But his attention was drawn back to the sniper position by continued firing. Vasquez was now engaging the northern group of hostiles, her shots reaching across distances that challenged comprehension. Each engagement represented shot placement that required not just marksmanship but an almost supernatural understanding of ballistics and environmental factors. Northern Group taking casualties, Chen relayed. They're trying to establish communication with their base, but Elena's keeping them pinned down. Every time someone exposes themselves to use radio equipment, she takes them out. Martinez realized he was witnessing tactical excellence that went beyond individual shooting ability. Vasquez was thinking several moves ahead, anticipating enemy responses and positioning herself to disrupt their decision-making process. She was fighting not just with bullets but with psychology, using precision fire to create uncertainty and fear among hostile forces. The support team finally reached the base of the ridge leading to Vasquez's position. As they dismounted and began the climb toward her nest, Martinez could hear the Barrett continuing to fire at measured intervals. Each shot represented a tactical decision made under pressure, with consequences that extended far beyond individual targets. Staff Sergeant Chen led the way up the rocky slope, his familiarity with the terrain allowing rapid movement despite the treacherous footing. Behind him, the infantry squad moved with the careful urgency of soldiers approaching an active combat zone where friendly fire was a constant concern. When they finally reached Vasquez's position, Martinez was struck by the scene of controlled chaos surrounding her firing point. Brass casings from the Barrett littered the ground around her position, testament to an engagement that had pushed both weapon and operator to their limits. Equipment was scattered with the functional efficiency of someone who had been fighting for their life while maintaining absolute precision. Vasquez herself appeared calm and focused despite the intensity of the engagement. Her uniform showed sweat stains and dust from hours in position, but her movements remained smooth and controlled as she continued scanning the valleys below for additional threats. Situation report, Martinez requested as he moved to a position where he could observe her area of operation. Eastern Group neutralized, 6 confirmed eliminations. Northern Group has taken casualties and withdrawn to positions approximately 5,500 meters from this location, beyond effective engagement range. Immediate threats to base operations and supply routes have been eliminated. Her report was delivered in the same professional tone she had used that morning, despite having just completed one of the most challenging sniper engagements in recent military history. Martinez found her composure as impressive as her shooting ability. Chen moved to his familiar position as spotter, immediately beginning to assess ammunition expenditure and equipment condition. 17 rounds fired, 16 confirmed hits, 1 round used for range confirmation on initial target. Weapon condition excellent, scope tracking normally. Martinez did quick mental calculations that left him stunned. 16 hits out of 17 shots at ranges exceeding 3,800 meters represented accuracy that challenged the limits of what modern sniper systems could achieve. Under field conditions with time pressure and multiple moving targets, such performance seemed almost impossible. Outstanding work, Specialist, Martinez said, meaning it more than any commendation he had ever awarded. Your actions this afternoon prevented what could have been a catastrophic attack on our supply operations. But, even as he spoke, Martinez was aware that his words were inadequate for the performance he had witnessed. Vasquez had demonstrated capabilities that belonged in military legend, yet she was receiving the same routine recognition that might be given for completing paperwork efficiently. Through his binoculars, Martinez continued scanning the areas where hostile forces had withdrawn. Occasional movement suggested that survivors were regrouping beyond sniper range, possibly preparing for renewed action under cover of darkness. The tactical situation remained dynamic, requiring continued vigilance despite the afternoon's successes.
What's your assessment for potential night operations? Martinez asked, curious to see how Vasquez would evaluate the changing tactical environment. They'll likely attempt movement after dark, using terrain features to avoid observation.
But, they've lost their heavy weapons capability and most of their experienced personnel.
Any future operations will be harassment rather than serious assault attempts.
Her analysis demonstrated the kind of strategic thinking that Martinez associated with seasoned officers rather than enlisted soldiers. She was considering not just immediate tactical factors but the broader implications of the day's engagement for future enemy capabilities. As the late afternoon sun began casting longer shadows across the mountains, Martinez found himself confronting the same questions that had troubled General Reed earlier. The military possessed formal systems for identifying and rewarding exceptional performance, yet somehow those systems had failed to recognize capabilities that were now undeniably demonstrated. The radio crackled with an incoming message from General Reed.
Support Team Leader, this is Base Command. Request detailed situation report for command evaluation. Martinez keyed his microphone, aware that his response would influence how the day's events were recorded and remembered.
Base Command, threat neutralized through exceptional sniper performance. Specialist Vasquez eliminated multiple high-value targets at extreme range under challenging conditions.
Immediate area secure, ongoing observation maintained.
The response came quickly.
Understood. Maintain position until full situation assessment complete. I want detailed documentation of all engagement parameters for official review.
As Martinez organized his teams to provide security while documenting the engagement, he realized he was participating in something that extended beyond routine military operations.
The afternoon had demonstrated individual excellence that challenged institutional assumptions about capability and service.
Around him, experienced soldiers were discussing what they had witnessed with the kind of subdued admiration reserved for truly exceptional performance. These were veterans who had seen outstanding marksmanship before, but the combination of distance, accuracy, and tactical effectiveness they had observed was unprecedented in their experience. Staff Sergeant Chen approached Martinez with ammunition counts and equipment assessments, but his expression suggested concerns that went beyond routine after-action procedures. "Sir, I need to tell you something about the situation here," Chen said, his voice carrying the weight of someone preparing to reveal uncomfortable truths.
Elena's performance today was incredible, but it wasn't unusual for her.
She's been operating at this level for months, but somehow her achievements keep getting minimized in official reports. Martinez nodded, recognizing the confirmation of patterns that General Reed's investigation had already begun to uncover.
What's your assessment of why that's happened? Chen looked toward Vasquez, who continued maintaining overwatch despite the arrival of support personnel.
I think people see what they expect to see, sir. Elena doesn't fit the stereotype of what a sniper should look like, so her achievements get credited to others or described in ways that don't highlight her individual contributions. The observation carried implications that extended far beyond individual recognition to fundamental questions about how military institutions identified and developed talent. Martinez found himself wondering how many other exceptional soldiers were serving with distinction while remaining invisible to official attention. As evening approached and the tactical situation stabilized, Martinez prepared to compile reports that would document not just the day's successful engagement but the broader questions it raised about excellence, recognition, and the responsibilities of military leadership. In the gathering darkness of the Afghan mountains, one soldier continued her vigilant watch over terrain where the difference between life and death was measured in milliseconds and millimeters. The day's engagement was complete, but the larger questions it raised about merit, service, and institutional blind spots were just beginning to emerge into the light of command attention. General Reed stood at his office window as dawn broke over forward operating Base Thunder, watching the first supply convoy of the day move safely through terrain that had been deadly just 24 hours earlier. The morning light revealed the strategic positions where Vasquez had eliminated threats, each location marked now only by scattered debris and the absence of hostile activity that had characterized the area for weeks. Sleep had eluded Reed throughout the night as he processed the implications of what he had witnessed and documented. Captain Martinez's detailed report lay on his desk alongside video footage, ballistic analyses, and testimonials from soldiers who had watched history being made in the mountains above their base. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, yet it challenged fundamental assumptions about military service that had shaped Reed's entire career. The official documentation showed 16 confirmed eliminations at ranges between 3,200 and 3,900 meters, achieved under combat conditions that would challenge even the most experienced snipers. The longest shot, verified by GPS coordinates and multiple witnesses, had reached 3,874 meters, a distance that placed it among the longest successful sniper shots in military history. But, the numbers, impressive as they were, failed to capture the tactical sophistication that had impressed Reed even more than raw marksmanship ability. Vasquez had demonstrated strategic thinking that transformed a defensive engagement into a comprehensive disruption of enemy operations across multiple sectors. Her understanding of enemy psychology, terrain advantages, and timing had elevated individual shooting skills into battlefield dominance. A knock at his door interrupted Reed's contemplation. "Come," he called, recognizing the measured pace of his senior staff approaching for the morning briefing. Colonel Harrison entered with files and the serious expression that characterized discussions of institutional significance. As Reed's chief of staff, Harrison had been instrumental in documenting the previous day's engagement while also researching the broader patterns of performance evaluation that Reed's investigation had uncovered. "Sir, I've completed the comprehensive review you requested of performance documentation and recognition patterns across our sniper operations," Harrison began, settling into his familiar chair across from Reed's desk. Reed gestured for him to continue, knowing that Harrison's methodical approach would provide the systematic analysis needed to understand what they were dealing with. "The patterns are consistent and, troubling, general. We have documented evidence of exceptional performance being systematically underreported when it originates from non-traditional sources. Vasquez's record is the most extreme example, but she's not alone." Harrison opened his folder to reveal charts and statistics that quantified institutional blind spots with uncomfortable precision. Performance ratings, mission success rates, and recognition awards showed clear patterns that favored traditional military profiles over demonstrated results. "How many other cases have you identified?" Reed asked, though he suspected the answer would confirm his worst fears about institutional effectiveness. 17 soldiers across different specialties whose documented performance significantly exceeds their official recognition. The common factor isn't capability, it's failure to conform to established expectations about who excels in particular roles. Reed studied the data, seeing confirmation of leadership failures that extended far beyond individual oversights. The military's commitment to merit-based advancement was being undermined by subtle but persistent biases that prevented excellent soldiers from receiving appropriate recognition. "What's your recommendation for addressing this situation?" Reed asked, knowing that his response would set precedents affecting careers and institutional culture. "I believe we need to take dramatic action to correct these documented oversights, sir. But, more importantly, we need to implement systematic changes that prevent similar situations from developing in the future." Harrison pulled out a detailed proposal that he had clearly spent considerable time developing. "I recommend immediate recognition for Vasquez's achievements, including commendations that reflect the historical significance of her performance. But, I also recommend a comprehensive review of evaluation and promotion systems to identify and eliminate the factors that allowed such exceptional service to go unrecognized." Reed found himself at a decision point that would define his leadership legacy. Taking action to correct documented injustices was the right thing to do, but it would also challenge institutional cultures that had developed over decades. The political implications would be significant, particularly regarding questions of gender integration and combat roles that remained contentious topics. The communication system on Reed's desk indicated an incoming priority message from Joint Chiefs of Staff Headquarters. The timing suggested that word of the previous day's engagement had reached higher command levels, bringing both opportunity and scrutiny to whatever decisions Reed made. "General Reed, this is General Thompson at Pentagon Operations. I understand you've had some remarkable sniper activity at your location. We need detailed briefings on performance capabilities and operational implications." Reed recognized the delicate nature of the inquiry. Senior leadership was clearly interested in the tactical implications of extraordinary sniper performance, but they would also be concerned about political and institutional ramifications of highlighting non-traditional achievement. General Thompson, I'm preparing comprehensive documentation that covers both tactical results and broader performance evaluation questions. The situation raises important issues about talent recognition and utilization that extend beyond individual achievements.
Understood.
I'm authorizing immediate transportation for you and key personnel to brief senior staff on these developments. We need to understand both the tactical capabilities you've documented and the institutional factors that affected recognition of those capabilities. Reed felt the weight of opportunity and responsibility settling on his shoulders. The briefing at the Pentagon would provide a platform for addressing systemic issues that affected military effectiveness, but it would also expose him to political pressures that could compromise his ability to advocate for necessary changes.
Roger, sir. We'll be prepared to present comprehensive findings within 48 hours.
As the communication ended, Reed turned to Harrison with instructions that would shape the entire briefing process.
Colonel, I want you to prepare 2 separate presentations.
One that covers the tactical achievements and their operational significance, and another that addresses the institutional patterns we've uncovered. Harrison nodded, understanding the strategic importance of separating demonstrable military success from more controversial questions about evaluation systems and recognition patterns. Reed's door opened again as Captain Martinez entered with additional documentation and a request that surprised him. Sir, Specialist Vasquez has requested a meeting with you. She says it's regarding the attention her performance has received and its potential impact on unit effectiveness. Reed felt curiosity about what Vasquez wanted to discuss, but he also recognized an opportunity to hear directly from the soldier at the center of the developing situation.
Send her in, Captain.
And I want you and Colonel Harrison present for this discussion. When Vasquez entered Reed's office, her bearing carried the same calm professionalism that had impressed him during their mountain encounter. She moved with the controlled precision of someone accustomed to high-stakes situations, but Reed detected underlying tension that suggested the recent attention was affecting her more than she had initially revealed. Sir, I appreciate the recognition that yesterday's engagement has received, but I'm concerned about the implications for my continued effectiveness and the morale of other personnel. Reed gestured for her to sit, recognizing that she was raising issues that he needed to understand before making decisions that would affect her career and unit cohesion.
What specific concerns do you have, Specialist?
Sir, I've been serving effectively in my current role because I've been able to operate without the kind of attention that can create friction within military units. If my performance becomes a focal point for broader discussions about roles and capabilities, it might compromise both my effectiveness and unit relationships. Reed appreciated her awareness of the complex dynamics surrounding exceptional performance in military environments.
Units functioned best when individual achievements supported collective success rather than creating divisions or resentment among personnel. Do you feel that recognition of your achievements would negatively impact your ability to serve effectively? Vasquez considered the question carefully before responding.
Sir, I believe that merit-based recognition is important for institutional effectiveness. But I also think that recognition needs to be implemented in ways that strengthen rather than disrupt unit cohesion and operational focus. Her answer demonstrated the kind of institutional awareness that Reed associated with senior leaders rather than junior enlisted personnel. She was considering not just personal implications but broader organizational effects of leadership decisions. Colonel Harrison leaned forward with a question that addressed tactical concerns.
Specialist, do you believe that publicity regarding your capabilities might compromise operational security or future mission effectiveness?
That's a significant concern, sir. Sniper effectiveness depends partly on uncertainty about capabilities and positioning. If enemy forces develop detailed intelligence about specific performance levels, they might adjust their tactics in ways that reduce our operational advantages. Reed recognized the validity of her operational security concerns while also understanding the importance of documenting exceptional performance for institutional learning and recognition purposes.
Vasquez, I want your honest assessment of how we should balance recognition of achievement with operational effectiveness and unit cohesion.
She was quiet for nearly a minute, clearly weighing multiple factors before responding. Sir, I think the most important thing is ensuring that lessons learned from successful operations are incorporated into training and tactical procedures. Individual recognition is meaningful, but institutional improvement has greater long-term value. Reed found himself impressed once again by her perspective on service and institutional priorities. She was more concerned with contributing to military effectiveness than with personal recognition, an attitude that characterized the most valuable soldiers in his experience. Captain Martinez raised another concern that had emerged during his investigation. Specialist, we've documented patterns suggesting that your achievements have been consistently underreported. How do you feel about the fact that your contributions haven't received appropriate recognition?
Sir, I understand that recognition systems sometimes lag behind performance realities. My primary focus has been on mission accomplishment rather than individual credit. But, I also recognize that accurate documentation serves important purposes for institutional learning and personnel development. Reed realized that Vasquez embodied exactly the kind of soldier that military institutions should be designed to identify, develop, and retain. Her combination of exceptional capability, institutional awareness, and service-focused attitude represented the highest ideals of military professionalism.
Vasquez, I'm going to be briefing senior leadership on yesterday's engagement and the broader performance patterns we've documented.
I want to ensure that your voice is represented in those discussions.
Are you willing to participate in briefings that might influence military policies and procedures?
She met his gaze directly, her expression serious but determined. Sir, if my experience can contribute to improved effectiveness and fairer recognition for all soldiers, then I'm willing to participate in whatever discussions you believe are appropriate. Reed felt a moment of pride in the quality of soldiers under his command, but also renewed determination to ensure that institutional systems supported rather than hindered such exceptional service. As the meeting concluded, Reed found himself with clarity about the course of action he needed to pursue. Excellence deserved recognition regardless of its source, and institutional blind spots needed to be addressed through leadership courage rather than administrative convenience. The morning sun was fully illuminated now, casting sharp shadows across the base where routine operations continued despite the extraordinary events of the previous day. In a few hours, Reed would begin preparing presentations that might influence military policies affecting thousands of soldiers. But, his immediate focus remained on ensuring that one exceptional soldier received the recognition she had earned while also addressing systemic issues that affected institutional effectiveness. The weight of truth was substantial, but so was the responsibility of leadership to act on that truth regardless of political convenience. The day ahead would test Reed's commitment to the principles that had guided his career, but it would also provide an opportunity to demonstrate that military excellence should be recognized and rewarded based on results rather than expectations. The Pentagon briefing room felt charged with anticipation as General Reed prepared to present findings that would challenge fundamental assumptions about military effectiveness and talent recognition. Around the polished mahogany table sat senior officers whose decisions influenced policies affecting hundreds of thousands of soldiers worldwide. The weight of institutional change rested on evidence that Reed had meticulously compiled over the past 72 hours. General Thompson, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, called the session to order with the gravity appropriate for discussions that might reshape military culture.
General Reed, your preliminary reports suggest performance achievements that warrant both recognition and systematic evaluation.
Please proceed with your comprehensive briefing. Reed activated the presentation system, beginning with tactical documentation that established credibility before addressing more challenging institutional questions. High-resolution photographs showed engagement distances verified by GPS coordinates, while ballistic analyses confirmed shooting performance that approached theoretical limits of modern sniper systems. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to brief you on combat effectiveness that redefines our understanding of sniper capabilities and, more importantly, institutional patterns that affect how we identify and utilize exceptional talent. The first section of Reed's presentation focused purely on documented performance, using objective metrics that removed subjective interpretation from extraordinary achievements. Video footage showed engagements across distances exceeding 3,800 meters under field conditions that challenged the most experienced marksmen. General Patricia Williams, Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel, studied the documentation with the analytical focus that had characterized her approach to military human resources throughout her career. General Reed, these performance metrics are remarkable. Can you walk us through the verification procedures that confirm these achievements? Reed had anticipated questions about documentation accuracy, knowing that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. Ma'am, we utilized multiple independent verification methods including GPS positioning, ballistic trajectory analysis, and witness statements from multiple personnel. Additionally, we have communication intercepts from enemy forces confirming casualties and tactical disruption.
The evidence was overwhelming in its scope and precision, but Reed recognized that senior leadership was evaluating more than individual performance. They were assessing implications for military doctrine, training programs, and personnel policies that affected institutional effectiveness across all service branches.
Admiral James Morrison raised concerns about operational security. General, while these achievements are impressive, what are the security implications of highlighting such specific capabilities? Are we potentially compromising tactical advantages through publicity?
Reed had prepared for this question through discussions with Vasquez and his intelligence staff. Sir, we've carefully balanced recognition requirements with operational security needs. The documentation focuses on validated techniques and training methodologies rather than specific individuals or unit locations. But Reed knew that the most challenging portion of his briefing was yet to come. The second section addressed institutional patterns that had allowed exceptional performance to remain unrecognized, raising questions about evaluation systems that extended far beyond individual cases. The performance achievements I've documented represent not just individual excellence, but systematic institutional failure to identify and properly utilize exceptional talent, Reed continued, shifting to charts that showed recognition patterns across multiple personnel categories. General Thompson leaned forward with the focused attention that indicated direct engagement with complex issues.
General Reed, explain what you mean by systematic institutional failure.
Reed activated displays showing performance data analyzed across gender, background, and assignment patterns. The statistical evidence revealed consistent undervaluation of achievement from non-traditional sources, with documented performance exceeding official recognition by significant margins. Sir, our analysis shows that exceptional performance is consistently underreported when it originates from soldiers who don't conform to established expectations about who excels in particular roles.
This represents not just individual injustice, but operational inefficiency that affects mission capability.
The room grew quiet as senior officers processed implications that extended beyond personnel policies to fundamental questions about military effectiveness and institutional culture. Reed recognized he was presenting findings that would require courage to address and significant resources to correct. General Williams asked the question that Reed knew was central to institutional response.
What specific recommendations do you have for addressing these documented patterns?
Reed had spent considerable time developing proposals that balanced immediate recognition needs with long-term systematic improvements. His recommendations addressed both individual cases and institutional changes needed to prevent similar situations from developing in the future.
I recommend 3 levels of action, ma'am. First, immediate recognition for documented achievements that have been inappropriately minimized.
Second, comprehensive review of evaluation and promotion systems to identify factors that prevent accurate assessment of performance. Third, implementation of training and oversight procedures that ensure merit-based recognition regardless of the source. The discussion that followed revealed the complex political and cultural factors that influenced military personnel policies. Senior officers raised concerns about implementation costs, potential resistance from traditional military culture, and the challenges of changing evaluation systems that had developed over decades. But Reed also detected genuine commitment to addressing documented problems, particularly from leaders who recognized that military effectiveness depended on utilizing all available talent regardless of its source.
Admiral Morrison posed a question that addressed broader implications. General Reed, how do we implement these changes without creating division or resentment among personnel who feel that traditional recognition patterns are being unfairly criticized?
Reed had anticipated concerns about unit cohesion and institutional stability during transition periods. Sir, I believe the key is focusing on enhanced effectiveness rather than criticism of past practices.
When we demonstrate that better talent recognition improves mission capability, most personnel will support changes that make their units more effective.
General Thompson called for a brief recess to allow senior staff to digest the information and prepare for decision-making discussions. During the break, Reed found himself approached by several officers who expressed both support for his recommendations and concerns about implementation challenges. General Williams pulled him aside for a private conversation that addressed some of his deepest concerns about institutional change. Marcus, what you've presented today is compelling, but you understand the political complexities involved in major personnel policy changes.
Are you prepared for the scrutiny and potential resistance that will accompany implementation?
Reed appreciated her directness and the opportunity to address leadership concerns honestly. Patricia, I believe that documented injustice requires corrective action regardless of political convenience. These soldiers have earned recognition through exceptional service, and our institution has an obligation to provide that recognition.
But, you also understand that how we implement change affects its ultimate success.
We need to be strategic about timing and methodology to ensure that reforms actually improve rather than disrupt institutional effectiveness. Reed nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her cautionary approach while maintaining his commitment to addressing documented problems.
I agree completely.
That's why my recommendations include comprehensive planning for implementation phases and monitoring procedures to ensure that changes achieve intended results.
When the briefing resumed, General Thompson announced decisions that would influence military culture for years to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence presented today demonstrates both exceptional individual achievement and institutional patterns that require systematic attention.
The announcement that followed exceeded Reed's expectations for institutional response.
Immediate recognition would be provided for documented achievements that had been inappropriately minimized, while comprehensive reviews would examine evaluation and promotion systems across all service branches. General Reed, I'm assigning you to lead a joint services task force that will develop and implement improvements to talent recognition systems. Your findings today represent the foundation for changes that will strengthen military effectiveness through better utilization of all available capabilities. Reed felt the weight of responsibility that accompanied opportunities to influence institutional culture, but also satisfaction at seeing documented excellence finally receiving appropriate attention. The briefing concluded with scheduling for follow-up sessions and resource allocation for implementing recommended changes. As senior officers departed, Reed realized that the morning's discussions had established momentum for addressing problems that extended far beyond individual recognition to fundamental questions about military effectiveness and institutional culture. 3 weeks later, Reed stood once again at the sniper position overlooking the valley where Vasquez had demonstrated exceptional capabilities that forced institutional change. But now the position was occupied by a training team documenting techniques and procedures that would be incorporated into advanced sniper curricula worldwide. Vasquez herself had been promoted to staff sergeant and assigned to the Pentagon Task Force, where her experience provided crucial perspective for policy development. Her extraordinary shooting achievements had been formally recognized through commendations that acknowledged both individual excellence and institutional failures that had initially prevented appropriate recognition. But, perhaps more importantly, her story had become a catalyst for systematic changes that would benefit soldiers whose contributions might otherwise remain invisible to official attention. Training programs now emphasized comprehensive evaluation methods, while promotion systems included safeguards against biases that prevented accurate assessment of performance.
The changes hadn't been implemented without resistance or challenges.
Some traditionalists argued that modifications to established systems were unnecessary, while others worried about disrupting unit cohesion through emphasis on individual achievement. But, accumulating evidence of improved effectiveness gradually convinced skeptics that merit-based recognition strengthened rather than weakened institutional capability.
Reed's final report to the Joint Chiefs documented outcomes that exceeded initial expectations.
Units that implemented improved recognition systems showed measurable improvements in morale, retention, and mission effectiveness. Soldiers who had previously operated below their potential began contributing at levels that enhanced overall capability. The story that began with a general walking past a Barrett .50 caliber rifle had evolved into institutional change that would affect military culture for generations. Excellence, it turned out, was more common than traditional recognition systems had suggested. It had simply been operating in shadows while others claimed the spotlight. As Reed prepared for retirement after 32 years of service, he reflected on the lessons learned from a single morning encounter with exceptional capability. Leadership, he realized, required the courage to challenge assumptions and the wisdom to act on evidence regardless of its source or implications. The mountains of Afghanistan continued to harbor dangers that required constant vigilance from America's finest soldiers. But, now those soldiers served in an institution better equipped to recognize and utilize the full spectrum of talent dedicated to the nation's defense. In the end, the story of Specialist Elena Vasquez became more than an account of extraordinary marksmanship. It became a reminder that excellence often operates quietly in the spaces between formal recognition, waiting for leaders with the vision to see beyond expectations to the reality of exceptional service. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle remained in its position overlooking the valley, maintained by soldiers who understood that their mission extended beyond individual achievement to collective security. And, in training facilities around the world, new snipers learned techniques developed from lessons that proved excellence knows no limits except those imposed by institutional blind spots. The general had stopped cold after reading the 3,200-meter sniper insignia, but the institution had learned to see beyond assumptions to the reality of exceptional service wherever it emerged. That transformation, more than any individual achievement, represented the true victory achieved in the mountains where courage and skill wrote themselves in precision and dedication to duty.